The episode opens with pure perversion, the male gaze upon a clueless foreign transfer student from Germany named Asuka Langley. The viewer, who has already been acquainted with Asuka, is presented with a new idea compared to where we had seen her last. She embodies a strong and free-spirited individual, a centerpiece of attention that takes down an angel with grace and intuitive decision-making. Asuka now arrives to the scene as merely an idea of sexual deviancy for some horny teen boys. What's most apparent about this specific opening is how we categorize it among others. Episode before is a small exposition dump from Gendo. Episode after is Asuka shopping for a swimsuit at the mall. Both of these openings are not characteristically important, at least for the episode they are trying to make, which makes this opening sequence an interest. But let's dig a little bit deeper. What exactly is the point of this opening? It's certainly not to sell merchandising for Asuka, so why open with scantily dressed photos and sexually charged dialogue? It's because this is the essence of what Asuka presents for this episode, a gateway to kickstart Shinji's libido and mount what may be the most critical moment to exist in the show. You mustn't run away, and protecting those you care about are early ideas to Shinji's evolution, but through Asuka, he is introduced to the idea of being his own man. Careful not to confuse this with being a man, because that's not what this scene is all about. We are talking about individualism here. The decisions he's made up until this point, they are his own, but with a recurring caveat, he is not an authority to his actions or ideas. Asuka, who is flamboyant and argumentative, allows Shinji to aggress himself towards her. In this scene, even though he arrives first to act, she orders him to provide suppressing fire for her engagement. She has no right to boss him around or even give him orders, yet she does, and that ticks him off. It drives him to the point where he blames her for actions that should represent a team effort, which he learned the value of from Rei and Misato. Shinji sees himself as an authority over Asuka because of seniority and his experiences, but misunderstands the biggest problem between both of them. Their egos are bigger than their actual results. They failed to defeat the angel competently and as compellingly compared to before, so now you have an inherent issue between the both of them. Shinji and Asuka are ready to establish themselves as superior, but both of them miscalculate the depth of each other's psychological fragility. But what makes up these individuals at the moment? Shinji, through the introductory arc, is presented as a quiet and recluse individual with a disturbed mind, but is now seemingly clear to a purpose and place in the world. Asuka, who is initialized as a centerpiece, ironically is not given much characterization or deeper personality themes, at least right away that is. The show decides to establish a connection to a character we just met, not with exposition, but with spunk and moxie. The angel Israfel presents the opportunity to allow two individuals to become one, or more simply, merging the minds of two diametrically opposed characters. We just met the girl, and she seems alright, but is she really comparable to Rei or Misato at this point? Not really. To bolster the overall attention to Asuka, the show time bombs the viewer and the characters by creating an ultimatum. Either you guys work together, both characteristically and literally, or that's it. Predictably, from the beginning, they cannot match each other. Two individuals at odds with each other cannot possibly work in tandem, especially if Asuka is so much more competent than Shinji, right?
Now it's time, I fear to tell, I've been holding it back so long.
Asuka's only purpose in life is to pilot the Eva. Most characters in the show have more plot-related purposes, Rei and Misato, but contrary to those, Asuka serves to represent the misguided individual who lacks character, but is the most apparent character, as in screen presence. Of course, the silliness of the plot surrounding their merge is apparent, but I love it anyway, especially how effectively it is portrayed after their heart-to-heart. To open, we are given a rapid and hilarious montage of the two beginning their practice. Clumsy, disjarred, and somewhat endearing. Although flawed in their initial union, the two's strong-willed determination to adapt to each other's habits, although aggressively, is one of great entertainment. Not a lot of characters emit the same aura of both pride and accomplishment after such a short-lived montage, but by the end we see a single unit that is completely ready to take on their foe with confidence. If we really think about this sequence though, the ideas within this montage are not many nor interesting. Most of the footage we are presented with can be arguably worthless or meaningless to their union. In fact, I think there are some other montages that portray relationship growth and companionship more effectively, yet we are drawn to training montages like Moths to a Flame because it's just pretty cool. The next scene is far more important anyways. The stage is set for what can be assumed to be a distinctive victory for Asuka and Shinji, but instead of cutting to that next day, we get to have a defining moment in the show. Asuka opens this scene with a metaphor about the Wall of Jericho, explaining that Shinji was not to breach her boundaries and remain where he lay. Shinji meets this metaphor with several facial expressions, one of which is important to his character as a whole. This face is a look of disappointment. Disappointment because he feels, even with all their training together, she doesn't trust him. Disappointment because she is simply not interested in him as a partner, double entendre intended. And disappointment because she does not see him as piloting equals and only associates herself with him because it is the mission. These are the feelings swirling inside his mind. Disappointment itself is a key trait to Shinji's character. Everyone he has ever had a connection to either betrays his expectations or doesn't care enough to understand him. Both Gendo and Asuka betray his expectations. Rei and early Toji don't care to understand him. His training and experiences with Asuka have led to both triumph and defeat. But on a more personal level, for the first time ever, Shinji has found someone similar to himself. A girl expected of major feats and having some level of inability to complete them resonated with his very being. So when Asuka does not return the same level of emotional attachment, he feels betrayed by his own expectations and heart. On the other hand, Asuka is something of an anomaly at this point. Until episode 22, we don't really understand the reasoning behind why she separates herself from Shinji other than some implications that boys and girls shouldn't sleep in the same room and because she values privacy. But that doesn't mean we can't talk about the implications of her Wall of Jericho metaphor. Asuka, as we'll come to see, is incapable of relying on others. She may know everyone, but that doesn't necessarily mean anyone cares about her. The unbreakable Wall of Jericho, which was ironically broken and invaded, is an early hint to viewers about a need for someone to break through her walls and understand her. At this point in the series, she isn't desperate for this emotional attachment, but if Shinji had recognized this early sign, her character could have been drastically shifted. Personally, I don't think it's right to blame Shinji for her eventual downfall. The man has his own problems. Which then leads us to our big character moment. During the night, Asuka, who is half asleep, goes to the bathroom and subconsciously sleeps next to Shinji, most likely a result of their training. Shinji, who is rightfully stunned, begins to examine something he has never witnessed before. A girl, his age, perfectly presented to him, completely unguarded and vulnerable. Shinji makes the decision to kiss this girl. But right before he does, he is met with divine vengeance of some sort. Asuka calls for her mother and cries in her sleep. Shinji immediately backs off and voices a frustrated remark. What's most apparent about this scene is that Shinji made a massive decision on his part even if he didn't go through with it. Coming full circle to the beginning of the episode, ushering Shinji into a moment of lust-filled ambition. Shinji has finally made a decision of his own, purely driven by instinct and his own authority, individualism at its finest. But at what cost? Well, for one, he seems dissatisfied with the result of that encounter. His underhanded remark about Asuka being a child only further builds upon the idea that Shinji sees himself as the more mature individual. But moreover, the audience has reaffirmed that Shinji is becoming more selfish and opinionated faster than we anticipated. But aside from that, this scene presents options in terms of their relationship going forward. 1. Shinji retains some level of twisted affection towards Asuka, and 2. Asuka has a strong attachment to her mother, enough to make her cry in her sleep. Both of these factors are important but not yet relevant to their relationship. The episode finishes off with the time bomb battle. Asuka and Shinji operate as one singular entity fighting for their pride and for victory. Although showcasing beauty and elegance, they are shadowed by a looming reality at hand, which makes the ending to this episode all the more bittersweet. In the grand scope of things, the feeling of finality behind this battle isn't quite their defining moment together. It is simply another day in the office as far as the show goes. Yet something about this fight stirs you up, until you want to fight for victory as much as they do, and you can't buy that type of engagement cheap. But that's about it. Hopefully you gained some insight, or gained a bit of hatred for my stupid opinions and misunderstanding of the show's core themes and iconography. Thanks for watching.